maybe we can start with your question about what you had earlier asked from them, who wants to join journalism, then we can come to your stories as well.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to know what's your interest in journalism and what was your understanding of media before you took this class?
It's a good question for my purpose. Okay, so who wants to respond to that? Anyone? Okay, Imba.
Yeah, I can. So my
Imba, you might have to move. Why don't you move here so that she can see you? Sit here.
I'll move here.
Yeah. Yeah. Face the camera. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Inba. I'm originally from India, and I think my fascination with journalism started when I was applying to college. I really wanted to be a music major, but that didn't end up working out. But then I thought that I would write about music instead, and I took up journalism. And I think as I did more research into it, the thing I realized is that there are so many voices where I come from that have been silenced because of many reasons, mostly the fact that a lot of like the people I relate with are not privileged money-wise. And I think that really hit me really hard, and I couldn't find any information about anything that I'm interested in. So my main reason behind taking this class is because I read a lot about this one independent journalist who's from my state in India, who did a lot for our state and kind of brought us up to the light. So that was my main motivation behind taking this class. And I think in taking this class and like learning a lot about how American media works, it just kind of more solidified what I believed in initially. And I think I realized that it is the way I'm going to go after college. So, yeah.
You know what? I'm having a little trouble hearing because when you turn your head, then I can't hear you.
So she said in short that she already had doubts and suspicions about American media, and after taking this class, they have been confirmed, and that's why she thinks that the independent media is the way she wants to take in her career decision or path forward, right?
Okay, and I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Imba?
Imba.
Imba.
How do you, I'm sorry, I can't hear it. Can you spell it for me? I'm sorry,
INBA.
INBA, okay, Inba, all right. Inba, do you read any of the South Asian periodicals?
Not since I've come to college. No, I feel like I've had so much work to do that I haven't been doing as much reading as I should be doing.
Yeah, well, the Indian newspapers and magazines are some of the better journalism that you will find, and there's a lot of good information in there about things going on within the Indian community. But more importantly, it's an example of how ethnic newspapers and other news organizations are finally learning about American ideas about journalism, because much of ethnic media has tended to be, mom and pop operations, and depending on the orientation of the publishers and the editors, a lot of them are more commercial rags, advertising rags, than they are actual news delivery vehicles. So I'm actually working with two Indian reporters right now on an investigative story around the lack of services for aging Indian elderly. And I've been so impressed by the quality of these South Asian newspapers. And this is I bring this up as an entree into the discussion of community and ethnic media, and that if you want to get started in independent media, you find yourself a good community or ethnic newspaper that does really good news. And you get your start there, because that's the pool where the other news organizations are going to be pulling from. And and I was part of a program way back in the late 1990s that was the first professional training program for journalists working in the ethnic and community media. And that program now has been replicated and grown at CUNY in New York. And so, you know, a lot of people coming out of journalism programs, especially the bigger ones, just expect that they're going to get the big job at the New York Times or, you know, Washington Post or whatever the big newspapers and networks are. But the real good reporting experience is going to come from choosing a good community ethnic newspaper to start, that you trust, that you think has really good reporting and good news content that you like, and working for them and cutting your teeth on that. And then moving on up to various publications, or if you want to work in broadcast, moving up in various smaller radio and TV network stations. So and that your interest in, you know, independent media will serve you in that it allows you to have a broader view of what news is about, and that you want to bring that sensibility to any newsroom that you go to, but you don't want to be waving the ideological progressive flag or anything like that. You do have to learn the culture of bigger newsrooms, and there is value in learning about and working in the bigger newsrooms, because you really get to see the inside of the beast. You get to see how you get you see the belly of the beast at work. And it's not just all academic stuff that you've learned in school or read somewhere else. And also, frankly, the best professional skills do actually still come out of working in some of these bigger newsrooms. You know, you cut your teeth on the smaller ones, and then you grow your skills by moving up at different levels at different publications or different TV and radio stations.
Right. That's excellent advice. Others, do you want to jump in? Hayden, go there. So that you face. Yeah, that's the chair. That's the student chair.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
If you just look at the camera, then and I can see your face instead of turning around. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
My name is Shady Davis. I'm also a journalism major, and the reason why I wanted to be a journalism major in college is because, like, I've always enjoyed writing. So I really wanted to do English as a major, but then I realized a lot of reading, and it's kind of mostly leads to teaching, which is not bad. Like, I'm always interested in that, but I really like the aspect of how journalists can be super creative and really tell people's stories in a very unique way. And I think part of taking this class is because I think when I first heard about independent media, it was in my journalism ethics class. We had to kind of talk about citizen journalism, and I picked an independent media outlet called The City, and I was really interested in reading a lot of their stories. And also I interviewed one of the editors as well, and he just brought up some amazing points, and I just had a chance to read a little bit more about it. And then I also saw a little bit of the Izzy Awards last semester, and heard about the story about the Native American tribe. I forgot the name at the moment, but it was just very interesting to hear and just see stories that aren't necessarily reported in mainstream media, in corporate media, and just the fact that we're able to almost shine a light on those people and give them a voice, because unfortunately the mainstream corporate media doesn't initially do that. So for me, I'm very interested as well to join independent media and work alongside them and be able to write stories and touch upon topics that usually aren't touched upon. So, yeah.
So what specific topics are you personally interested in pursuing?
I would say for me, I definitely like just reading the climate change story was really interesting. I love the aspect of just kind of talking about green algae and a lot of things that we aren't aware of and how climate change affects us. Also talking about just shining a light on different minority groups, different racial groups as well. As someone who is a part of many, so it's just for me. I just want to cover topics that aren't necessarily covered in mainstream media, such as climate change, such as racial and minority issues as well. So
yeah, okay, good. So I heard you say that you were thinking about majoring in English because you like writing. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
English. I enjoy reading books as well. And I felt like it was a subject that I generally did well in. A lot of people were like, yeah, like English would be great for you. I kind of saw how like it's a lot of reading. It's very, I don't know if it's the best word to say, but very specific. So like, I feel like if you want to major in English, like you have to, I guess at some point, be a teacher and teach, which like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not necessarily the route I want to go necessarily. But I did take a creative writing class in high school my senior year, and like one of the teachers I was teaching it used to work at the Wall Street Journal, and that also kind of sparked my interest. But he kind of immediately like shut down any like expectation. He was like, listen, like it's a very hard industry, like not paid as much, it's a very like he kind of gave me a little bit of the spiel, but I didn't let that stop me because I knew that there was more to it. I know that it isn't a job that's super like high paying, but it's more if you are passionate about something and that you want to be able to share other stories. So I definitely like wanted to continue to do that and not prove him wrong, but just not let him necessarily discourage, but also I know the truth as well. So I think that was something that I picked up from him, and I still obviously talk to him today. He's still a great influence in my life. But yeah.
Okay. The reason that I asked you that question is because if you're thinking of going to graduate journalism school, or if you're applying for a job, at a news organization, the worst thing you can say is that you love writing, because you will not be hired for that. Okay. And you should bear that in mind, because that's a mistake that a lot of people make when they apply to graduate journalism programs or when they apply for jobs. What you can say is that your background, your love for literature and writing informs your ability to tell good news stories, and that that there's a lack of good news writing, that compels people, keeps people reading their stories, and raises the voices of unrepresented voices, blah, blah, blah. You have to kind of, take that route.
Yeah.
So message to all of you, do not say that you love writing.
Hold it down, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a great tip. I totally endorse you, Linda. Okay, so Olivia, now move to the student chair. You have to move up. So Olivia has something to say. So say it and face the camera.
Hi, I'm Olivia Sands. Well, I actually just have a question. What is your thought on graduate school for journalism? That's been something I've been kind of debating in my head, so I just want to know what you think.
Yeah, boy, I have to be careful how I answer that question. It has its advantages and disadvantages. It's going to graduate school of journalism, and primarily, really, we are speaking about Columbia Journalism School or Northwestern, primarily. I mean, there is the University of Maryland, there is Berkeley. But basically, if you're talking about, Berkeley is actually considered a top journalism school. But in all those cases, what you're doing is you're applying in order to develop your network, and in order for people to see your talent. And there are some really good programs, but they're murder. I mean, the program at Columbia is murder. I think you're there for like a year and a half, and you have to learn basically 3 years worth of journalism in that time. So it's really kind of a toss up as to the value of journalism. If you're young and you're eager and you've got real good get up and go, that's what journalism schools are looking for. I would recommend it because you can make really good contacts that way. But the thing I would caution you against is developing a snooty attitude about it. I mean, that's what when I've had graduates from journalism schools come to me, they come in with a very, very kind of holier than thou entitled attitude about, they don't want to do scut work. They want to be out there doing the immediate investigative reporting, and they want to make a big splash with their names, kind of thing. And they're the ones that I just reject automatically. I don't care how talented or what their grades are, or anything like that. Their people skills suck right away. I can see that. So, I think the downside of journalism school is this sense of entitlement and privilege that they can generate in their graduates. And I'll tell you, for those of us who are in the business, that is a real turnoff. So you should be aware of that right now.
Thank you.
You can see Linda does not mince her words. And that's what I love about you, Linda. Okay.
Yeah, no, I would have appreciated having that advice when I was that age, so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Samar is another of our students who has a question or a comment. Come to the hot seat.
Well,
Hi.
my interest in journalism really peaked in like elementary school with like weather. I really was like interested in just like, I guess, reporting on weather and going outside and like talking about Hurricane Sandy or like whatever's going on. But then when an incident happened in my area, because I grew up in Harlem, with one of the young men in my building who I used to like hang around with in my building, because we were like a community, and one of them were like murdered by the police in the area. Seeing about like the coverage that was done by like the people in the area, and like seeing how the police that hurt him and killed him were not investigated like on like the things that they were doing while they were working, and like a lot of the instances that happened that were overlooked. And I was watching like the coverage that was done on TV when I was younger, and just seeing how they were focused on, I guess, his behavior in class or grades or drugs or whatever it may be, just to find things like that instead of focusing on how a young life was lost. And then, you know, later on, they, you know, months later, they do coverage on saying, oh, like this is what the police had done, and you know, we didn't really look into it. And it was, you know, too late. But seeing how the coverage mainly focused on, I guess, the family grieving, and just focusing on that nature, it really just made me want to really get into investigative journalism, to attack these things head on immediately, so people can really focus on like the real problem. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And so that's what you want to do? You want to be an investigative reporter?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And are you reading any investigative sites?
Well, yes, like whenever I like hear about news coming out, I do look into different platforms and different like writers online about like seeing documents that they have that are not like being pushed out for like mass media and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And have you got any writing or reporting experience like on a school newspaper or anything like that?
Well, I started like writing for like my newspaper in high school, so it's like where it started. And then like working with like editing here in Ithaca and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did start with like print writing on newspaper.
Great. So what do you plan to do when you graduate then? What are you a senior yet?
No, I'm a junior.
One year
Okay.
to go.
Yeah, one more year.
Okay. Have you got any ideas about what you think you're going to be doing when you graduate?
I feel like I hope to like have an internship and seeing how that goes, and like really putting myself just like throwing myself out there and just seeing, like, you know, like you mentioned, the inside of like what really goes on when people are writing these things and working for these corporations, and I guess seeing if that experience is for me and deciding like who I would want to work for.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. For those of you that are people of color in the room, there are programs now that are reaching out to young people of color to pull them into journalism. And one of those is the Reynolds Institute for, I think it's called the Reynolds Institute for whatever journalism. You know the Reynolds Institute, Raza?
I know, yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing that you can look up. And then there are other programs like the Ida B. Wells Society, which does free trainings for investigative journalists of color who are just starting into business. So, you know, my advice to you is to get a job wherever you can get, when it's probably going to be a small publication, like probably a community thing or a niche interest publication. And then, you know, learn on the job and then take advantage, get yourself involved in the journalism networks. And there are low price and free trainings for you to start pursuing an interest around investigative reporting, especially investigative reporters and editors, which is the association. yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about what you see missing in the coverage, and it's extremely aggravating. There are a lot of people of color that have been fed up for a long time. And I know that especially the older journalists who got in the 70s and were essentially mentored by their white editors at their news sites, at their news organizations, really found it hard when the police killings in the last, several years became much more well known, and they had to keep their mouths shut. And it was a dilemma because on the one hand, it was these white editors that helped them advance the profession. But on the other hand, so they didn't want to bite the hand that fed them, literally. But on the other hand, their personal anger, especially among African Americans, was really, really tangible, and it was very suppressed. And so now after George Floyd, especially, those voices are becoming more prominent in the newsroom. And so there's some signs of change. But again, we went through this in the 70s when the Kerner Commission report came out to talk about what happened with the inner city riots going on back then. And a lot of it was blamed on the lack of media coverage of how people in the inner cities were living. So, it's hard to tell. There's a lot of stuff going on now where news organizations are seriously listening and trying to, accommodate, be more culturally sensitive and all that kind of stuff. But it's still going to always be a battle, especially in the areas where there are very few people of color. And those are things that you're going to be up against. I'm just telling you right now, that's the facts. All of us, we deal with it in one way or another. And people tend not to talk about it because they buy into this notion that, if they're failing, it's because of something they haven't done or is there a lack of their ability, when in fact it actually is racism going on and discrimination going on. So just by way of saying that this is good, I don't want to discourage you to become an investigative journalist. In fact, I want you to become a really good investigative journalist. And so you have to be aware of some of the obstacles that you're going to encounter while you're out there.
Right. I agree with you. I feel like also with the incidents with George Floyd, it's sad even now that I'm not sure if you know Candace Owens. She's a journalist that is she has her own broadcasting thing online on YouTube and on another app where she came up with a documentary on how basically minimizing the death of George Floyd and trying to, I guess, bring all those things back now. And it's when there was progress happening, it's kind of going backwards again, which is something that happens a lot, but it's really sad to see that happen still.
Yeah. Well, you sound like you're really kind of aware of a lot of stuff, and I encourage you to really pursue that ambition.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any other questions? Because we are almost at the end of our class time. I think there's just 1 minute left. Brooke or Brianna, if you have anything to ask or add, just go ahead. Oh, okay. So she might email you, one of our students. Is that okay, Linda? Can I give them your email?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions, that's fine. The thing that you're going to get from me is kind of the hardcore reality of the business. As you can see. So.
Yes. No rosy picture.
Yeah, well, some rosy picture, but not just that. So.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Linda. This was really, and some of the points you made, I've been taking notes copiously, and as I warned you, I might write an article. I will, of course, quote you and cite you on all the issues. But thank you so much for the overview of the sector, of its recent history, which sadly is not fully documented. And I'm glad that you came to the class because you don't find much material on what has happened in the past 1 decade, which has been tumultuous to say the least. And the right-wing sites, the propaganda influence, the way media and journalism have totally changed. But more importantly, this great sharp advice to the students, far better than I could give, for example. So thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.